جاهزين نبدأ؟
اتفضل دكتور، اتفضل.
الكنترول. يلا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. His Excellency Dr. Ashraf Amir, Vice President of the Saudi Society of Family and Community Medicine, GS Company, our respectful speakers, our respectful attendees, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On behalf of the Saudi Society of Family and Community Medicine, I welcome you all to this webinar titled Race to Defeat Meningitis. Get involved, join the race. This webinar is held by the Saudi Society of Family and Community Medicine in collaboration with GSK Company, coinciding with the World Meningitis Day, which comes every year on the 5th of October. Also, I welcome our eminent speakers in this conference, as well as our attendees, whose number reaches more than 500 now attending, and who are registered, that is, by thousands. Regarding to this webinar, I should thank the Saudi Society and the GS Company and the organizing company FEXAS ملتقى الخبرات لتنظيم المعارض والمؤتمرات for all the great efforts that made to hold this conference as usual to be so perfect. Walhamdulillah. I am Dr. Abdul Hafiz Khojab, consultant of community medicine. I'm happy and honored to be with you and among these distinguished speakers as a moderator for this conference. Let us start with the first lecture, Meningitis Disease, Burden and Epidemiology. The speaker is Dr. Faisal Farahat. He is a consultant of public health and community medicine, infection prevention and control program in King Abdulaziz Medical City, Ministry of National Guard Health Affairs in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. As regard his academic position, Dr. Farhat is professor in Department of Public Health and Community Medicine in Menofia University in Egypt. Since 2014 up till now. And as regard his professional experiences, Dr. Farhat worked as a consultant in Department of Preventive Medicine and as a supervisor for the postgraduate training and research center in Armed Forces Hospital in Taif in Saudi Arabia. He is a member in many committees. For example, the research committee in College of Allied Medical Sciences in King Saud bin Abdul Aziz University for Health Sciences in Jeddah, and he is co-chair in Sexually Transmitted Diseases Committee, Hazardous Materials Committee, TB Control Committee in King Abdulaziz Medical City in Jeddah. Dr. Farhat is a reviewer for a lot of journals and has a large number of peer-reviewed publications and conference presentations. That is little of many things, but I will stop to hear from him the very important topic he is going to give it tonight. Dr. Farhat, the floor is yours. You can start now.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. First of all, actually, this is a great opportunity and pleasure for me to participate in this important event in celebration of the World Meningitis Day. And maybe this is the first time that I maybe some experience related to the celebration of first day of this day worldwide. And also, I would like to extend my thanks to my colleagues at the Saudi Society of Family and Community Medicine for their kind invitation and to present this important topic about the meningococcal disease burden and epidemiology. So actually, this kind of disease is a very old disease. We have it since more than 200 years now. And still worldwide, there are many cases actually being reported, 1.2 million cases of confirmed meningococcal meningitis, and more than 300,000 deaths that occur because of this disease, and a significant proportion of people with long-term comorbidities and disabilities related to this disease. As you know, the disease actually is caused by an organism, which is the Neisseria meningitidis, which is a gram-negative diplococcal bacterium. And we know that there are 12 serogroups of this organism. However, only 6 of these 12 serogroups are responsible for the cases of invasive meningococcal disease. The transmission occurs from person to person through a droplet infection. And this organism actually also infects only human population. The main kind of dilemma related to this disease is mainly to the onset, because actually if it's like 12 hours that pass since the symptom that actually start as a non-specific symptoms, last for 4 to 8 hours, flu-like symptoms mostly. And then at 12 hours, the specific symptoms related to the rash, the neck stiffness, the photophobia, the nausea. All of these symptoms actually are common, and it's can be considered as a late diagnosis actually if 12 hours just passed, since that the hospital admission is high, and also the complications related to the disease are severe and increasing dramatically later on, specifically if the time that continue until 24 hours, and the probability for death is also very high. What are the most clinical presentation for the disease? Actually, we are aware of 2 main kind of clinical presentation that are seen the meningococcal meningitis and the meningococcal septicemia. The issue here that 10% of people with meningococcal meningitis actually will come to or will be at risk for death. And the fatality rate reached to 40% among people with meningococcal septicemia that may later happen and affect those population. And among the people who survive this kind of an episode, the long-term sequelae are huge, actually. Death is a significant complication or sequelae of such kind of a disease. It's a kind of a fatal disease. However, like among the survivors, 20% of them will come with some kind of a long-term impact. Cognitive deterioration or deficits, hearing impairment, may affect also organs that may be at risk for multi-organ failure, motor impairment, renal impairment, and limb amputation that may also happen and affect those people. Who is at risk for the disease? Actually, there are several factors, but the most important thing is crowding situation. When people are in close contact, social kind of gathering and mass gathering events and traveling to high risk areas. So people who are military recruits, for example, the college students visiting mass gathering events, and the largest mass gathering that we know is the Hajj and also the Umrah events. However, there are some kind of individuals at higher risk for this invasive meningococcal disease related to the immune deficiency syndromes that affect the population, the complement deficiencies, the asplenia, the other kind of immunodeficiencies that may be there. So it's kind of a social, environmental, and specific individual factors that put those population at increased risk for complication, for acquiring the disease, and also at risk for severe complications. The adolescent population may work as a kind of a vector for the transmission of such infection. The carriage rate is high among those people. And if you look at the data that among adolescents, the nasopharyngeal carriage reached to 50% when they are in crowded population. This is a significantly very high percentage. And this is because the more kind of activities, social gathering and social kind of interaction among adolescents put them at risk to carry the organism and transmit to the higher or people, individuals at houses that may be at higher risk, including the elderly and the young children. The dilemma for this meningococcal disease, it comes related to the surveillance programs. So we are, from all the data that are being published currently, we see variation definitely between different countries, whether developed or developing countries. But overall, worldwide, we have some kind of lack in the surveillance programs that might be available, especially in some of the developing countries where the surveillance activities and surveillance program are not well established. The gold standard method for diagnosis or for confirmation of the disease is still an issue. And also many of the laboratories doesn't have the capabilities for strain characterization. And worldwide, there are variable diagnostic methods that are there. So all of these kind of factors actually make the estimate or the true actual estimate of the burden of invasive meningococcal disease really changeable. And if you look at this figure, there is variation, kind of a mosaic appearance with different serogroups that are spread in different countries. Meningitis or serogroup B, for example, in Western countries in North America and Europe. And we'll find also other serogroups, including serogroup C or serogroup W. If we look at Saudi Arabia, for example, we'll find like serogroup A, B, C, and there is some kind of a significant part here that is not determined or identified. And also another observation that still the data are kind of a late data. These data reported in 2011. In the other countries around us, we see like variation in data, but it gives us some kind of a more recent data, and still we need to work again among such kind of identification or methods to report actually the cases that might be there. So the distribution of the meningococcal serogroup is kind of unpredictable. It varies with lots of factors, with more social interactions, with climate change also the effect things are there, and with lack of surveillance programs and activities, the actual distribution or the true burden is not yet well known. If you go an example, these are data from Europe in 2017, and there was like 3,000 cases has been reported, incidence about 0.5 to 1.3 cases per 100,000 population. Fatality rate reached to about 10% of the people. And when we have a close look on the distribution of the serogroups in Europe, we found that like the serogroup B represent more than half of the cases being reported. And also still there are several variations also in different parts in Europe, from west to eastern parts there. But the point that an example from UK where they intervene with the vaccination. The first actually vaccine was introduced in 1999 following an outbreak because of the meningitis or meningococcal meningitis serogroup C. In 2015, a quadrivalent vaccine, the meningitis ACWY vaccine, was also introduced with increase of cases of meningitis W that been there. And actually, they looked for the adolescent population who were 13 to 18 years of age. And also at the same year in 2015, meningitis B vaccine was introduced as a routine for the national infant or within the national infant immunization program in the United Kingdom. So this kind of an example for the intervention with vaccination when you have a good knowledge of the surveillance activities or the distribution of the specific disease that been there. The status in the United States is different, with a variation also in the serogroup distribution. While 50% or more in Europe, still the meningitis B represent about 40%, and also there are other serogroups that also represent about 30% each, the men Y and also the serogroup C. However, still the incidence was very low in the United States, and that's why there is no kind of a routine recommendation in states unless among the adolescent population. The vaccine meningococcal ACWY is recommended for adolescent 11 and 16 years of age. And also meningitis B vaccine is recommended for high-risk population. So again, the knowledge about the surveillance activities drive our decisions related to the implementation of preventive actions. In China, there is also kind of a response that happened with the changing and shift in serogroups from serogroup A, for example, until it come to 2003, where a serogroup C was predominant, then W in 2006, then serogroup B in 2015. And there are some kind of a different interventions with different vaccines, starting from the monovalent serogroup A vaccine, the bivalent, the A plus C, and the quadrivalent ACWY vaccine till the moment. And still there are two kind of a new vaccine, a new serogroup, which is a serogroup X. Still there is no kind of a vaccine available for serogroup X to make this kind of a coverage for it. This is a historical data from actually the meningitis belt in Africa. And we know that Africa was kind of an endemic area for meningitis. And this meningitis belt area or region, actually, it involved about 21 countries from Senegal in the west to Ethiopia in the east, population about 300 million people. And meningitis serogroup A was the most predominant, actually, type of group or serogroup of meningococcal meningitis, and the burden was mostly or majority of cases were related to meningitis A. However, there was an intervention. This was international campaign that happened since 2010 until 2016, where 80% of those 300 people actually received at least one dose of the monovalent vaccine, which was called the Menafri-Vac. And if you look at these data, for example, from Chad, we find how the vaccine was really effective following some kind of outbreaks that being there. And we can now say that the disease is almost eliminated from this kind of the meningitis. Serogroup A is almost eliminated from this area of region. However, following the meningitis A spread, there was some kind of a shift that happened to, again, to meningitis C group and meningitis W group. And these both C and W actually are covered by the ACWI vaccine. However, there is a new kind of a serogroup that's been increasing in the MenC. However, till the moment, we don't have a vaccine that covers the MenX. What happened actually in the meningitis bill was really kind of a significant international effective intervention that been there. However, still the emergence of the other serogroups that are not covered in the vaccine is still an issue. And the shift that happened among those serogroups also make some kind of a great challenge and support the need for a continuous surveillance activities to be there. When we come to the north, in North Africa, for example, still the data are deficient. We don't have a sufficient data from the North African countries. For example, one study from a hospital in Tunisia reported that meningitis B was responsible for 80% of the cases that was actually happened, majority of the cases among children who are less than 5 years of age. In Morocco, where the incidence is a little bit high, it's 2 to 3.6 per 100,000 population. And again, 95% of the cases during the time of the study was related to the serogroup B. Algeria, the incidence is much lower. However, the contribution was affect more the children less than 5 years of age. And actually, the men B and W also were responsible for most of the cases of the invasive meningococcal disease. In Egypt, also from one study about the data that tell us about 50% of 135 cases being reported were also related to meningitis B, followed by A, and then meningitis W. So in nearby countries in our region, in the Gulf region, Kuwait, for example, meningitis B responsible for 30% of the cases in data reported from 1987 to 2013. In Iraq, meningitis B recently in 2020 reported as 77%, which significantly increased data recently reported from a nearby country. And in Turkey, again, the meningitis B serogroup is responsible for 65% of the cases. And this table gives us the distribution of the incidence of invasive meningococcal disease in the Middle Eastern countries with a variation that we can see here. However, the point, just again, I would like to highlight that the data are really old. Maybe the recent was in 2009, and we don't have data in this graph that tell us about the real distribution in both people, in this population. With the focus in Saudi Arabia, maybe the first kind of an outbreak happened in Saudi Arabia was in 1987. It occurred during the Hajj time, and it was related to a serogroup A that was delivered or through the pilgrims who came from the southeastern area from India, where there was an outbreak actually occurred because of serogroup A. And this outbreak that happened in 1987 was responsible for more than 30,000 cases of meningococcal meningitis that occurred in Africa in the next year in 1988. So we can see here how the risk of being in mass gathering event, and the Hajj is the largest one, the risk of transmission and occurrence of such kind of outbreaks is also a potential and need to all the time have a good look on the data that been there. If we go back on data from Saudi Arabia during the Hajj time, there is some kind of a sporadic outbreaks occur since 1995, and cases are there. Maybe in 1997, there was some kind of an outbreak that happened, and followed by the introduction of the bivalent vaccine, the A and C vaccine that was introduced at the time. However, the largest to the moment outbreak that happened during Hajj was in 2000 and 2001. And during that time, the attack rate was 7.4 per 100,000 population. And the case fatality was 30%, 28% of people who affected by this condition died. Later on, if we look at the data since that time, during the time from 1995 until 2002, there was 1,100 cases actually being reported and identified among those population. And later on, during the time from 2002 until we come to 2011, there was data has been reported till us about 40% of the cases were related to meningitis W, 40% meningitis A, and 16.5% were related to meningitis B. The time from 2012 until actually 2000, there are data until 2019, there are 44 cases being reported. However, there is no kind of a data related to the strain characterization. The serogroup data are not available for those people. These are data based on the Ministry of Health statistical yearly statistical book. And when we look also again at the data reported from Ministry of Health, the distribution of cases in Saudi Arabia, there is no kind of a seasonal pattern. And also there is no kind of a specific kind of a distribution of cases, although maybe in some region the number of cases are higher than other areas, but does not give us some kind of an impression related to a real association between region and specific disease that might be there. However, the cases are there everywhere. There are reporting of cases, and this may give us, might be there is a potential of underreporting of cases, or a good reporting that may relate to increased cases in some region, for example, in Riyadh and Medina. Related to the age distribution, the disease affect all age groups. And as we see in this figure, and we can see like almost a constant number of cases being reported since 2010, 2017. Children less than 1 year are the highest kind of population being there, and also the adolescent and young adult population, again, another risk people that being there. However, the cases affect all age groups in different times over the times. Another area related to the carriage, especially among the Hajj pilgrims, this study has been published in 2017, and it showed among the paired cohort population that there is some kind of a doubling of cases before at departure and arrival. However, when we have a look on the data or the whole population, 1,000 cases, there were almost 36 cases where kind of have a carriage with an overall carriage 3.4%, with difference between high-risk countries and low-risk countries. And majority of the cases were related to the serogroup B among those people. Also, another data from Turkey among Hajj pilgrims who came from Turkey tell us there are about 10 cases or 9 cases being reported with carrying a serogroup B. And then there is one case who returned back, who was negative before, and when he arrived back to Turkey, he was positive as a carrier for B. And this gives us the dynamicity of the transmission of the different serogroups, especially in mass gathering events like Hajj. So Hajj always can be a focus, not only to acquire some kind of infections, but also maybe to transmit or be a kind of a place or an area to transmit the infection to other countries and other places. So this is maybe give us some kind of a distribution, the current data that might be have that there are different variation, mosaic appearance with the serogroup distribution and around us in different countries, with B again in most of the Western countries, and the variation with A and C and W and B in other countries. So the current recommendation in Saudi Arabia for the vaccination are 2 doses for children to be given at 9 and 12 months. And another vaccination that is majority of people are missing is the adolescent immunization at the college entry at 18 years of age. Booster dose should be given of the meningococcal ACWY conjugate vaccine, and with Hajj, people who are performing Hajj or working during Hajj need to receive also a booster dose of the meningococcal ACWY conjugate vaccine. And based on this kind of recommendation, we may have an opportunity, as we see now, that there is some kind of a control of the cases in Saudi Arabia. So at the end, what are the major concerns? Actually, there are lots of concerns related to the changing, the dynamic kind of activity of this organism, the shift in the serogroups and genotypes. And on the other hand, there are limited data. We really suffer of these limited data, especially in countries that constitute most of the pilgrims who came to Saudi Arabia, and the continuous again surveillance activities and ongoing surveillance is the robust thing for such kind of an important knowledge and to acquire good information that drive our decisions. We know that the trend is changing and continuously will change. However, the behavioral and environmental factors also are changing and put us at increased risk, especially with the globalization, increasing mass gathering activities and events, the climate change that's been around us, and also the impact of the public health interventions, especially primarily, actually, the vaccination programs that need also to be dynamically working and being there and updating based on the changing in the serogroup activity with this organism. And with this, I would like to conclude with this kind of a slide related. The disease actually is a risk, continue as a risk and significant risk for the whole kind of a population and people worldwide. And we know that vaccination are very and highly effective to control and to prevent such kind of a problem. However, we need to all the time to keep eye and to support the surveillance activities. And without an ongoing surveillance, we will not be able to monitor any trend over time. We will not be able even to support any kind of recommendations related to prevention or to vaccination, for example, among the population, and be able to put such kind of a problem under control. So with this, I would like to thank you all for your attendance and being with us, and inshallah we'll be around for any question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Faisal Farhat, for this nice presentation. And I will shift the mic to the next speaker, and the next lecture will be invasive meningococcal disease, microbiological aspects. And the speaker is Professor Atif Shibl. He is chairman of the Microbiology and Immunology Department in College of Medicine, Al Faisal University, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Professor Shibl obtained his MRCP and PhD in medical microbiology from UK in 1979. Later, he progressed to Professor of Microbiology in 1985. He is the program director for a master program in infection control at the university. He is a member of the editorial board of many journals. For example, some of it, the International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents, International Journal of Infectious Disease, Journal of Chemotherapy, Saudi Pharmaceutical Journal, Saudi Medical Journal, Epidemiology and Global Health, and Journal of Global Antimicrobial Resistance. In addition, he is a council member of the International Society for Infectious Diseases, Mediterranean Society of Chemotherapy, and International Society of Chemotherapy. He is vice president of Arab Society of Chemotherapy, Microbiology, and Infectious Diseases. He has been nominated as an ambassador for American Society of Microbiology for MENA region and the International Council for European Society of Microbiology and Infectious Diseases. Professor Shibli is an author of more than 200 publications in national and international journals related to his key interests in antibiotic resistance policy and infection control. Professor Shibli, the floor is yours. The mic with you, and we are going to hear from you very enjoyable and useful lecture. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Abdulaziz. It was nice to join this important meeting and celebrating the 5th of October for the Meningococcal Day. I also extend my thanks to the Society of Family Medicine for allowing me to participate in this meeting as well. Let me, where is my slides? Let me share with you now the slides. Yeah, here it is.
Good. It is clear.
Yeah, clear now?
Yes.
Yeah, I will, here you are. Right. So, first of all, probably Dr. Faisal addressed already issue related to...
Sorry, Prof. This
Yes.
is a list of lectures. Just choose the one you are going to give it now.
This is the one, no?
No,
Oh, sorry.
not yet.
Oh,
You are
Right.
preparing to do it now.
let me go back, stop sharing. Yeah, there. Yeah, here it is. Is now, can you see it?
Yeah. Good. Okay, go on, please.
Is it okay now?
Very clear.
Okay, okay. Now, Dr. Faisal addressed already some of the issue related to epidemiology of the meningococcal in Europe, in the state, in some region countries here. However, you know, the problem, as he mentioned, that we don't have what you call it a recent surveillance program of the meningococcal disease. When I discuss it from the microbiological point of view, I mean, usually you need to have what you call it a special media with a special condition. The microorganism, Neisseria meningitis, is really a fragile organism, not easy to keep for a long time outside. So the problem also related to, we don't really able to isolate several meningococcal strain because two issues: the difficulty of using selective media to do that, and the issue related to empirical therapy, where most of the clinicians, usually when they suspect cases of meningitis, they initiate probably empirical therapy. Plus, of course, some of the labs actually they go ahead and test for some in relation to serology. So they only isolate if the serological positive or not, and they never isolate the microorganisms. That's why most of the data I will present from different regions, including Saudi Arabia, will be actually on all the data. However, it can help us to see what is going on, at least in the different serotypes we work with. Let me, first of all, as a basic for the microbiology of the organism itself. It's one of the encapsulated gram-negative diplococci. We've seen almost what you call it carrier asymptomatic is very common, almost 10 to 20%. And as stated from the previous speakers, it's transmitted by different ways, including respiratory secretion, direct contact, probably the incubation period is about 2 to 10 days. Now, the invasive meningococcal disease can cause actually serious illness and different sequelae. In 2015, in European countries, almost 3,000 invasive disease, including 280 deaths were reported. And in the United States, again, almost 350 invasive meningococcal disease, including 45 deaths was also reported. So it's really one of the disease devastating actually as a deadly global disease. With the high mortality, if you don't treat it, is up to 50%. Even if you treat it, it's about 10 to 15%. The issue also related to the complications from the meningococcal. Even if you treat, even the patient recovered, still we have really a complication issue. The other issue related to is usually misdiagnosed or related to rapid progressions despite the use of the antibiotics itself. And there is, as everyone aware of, we have what you call it 2 incidence peaks, one in infant and one in adolescents, and I will discuss that later on. Now, what is the several factors may actually influence the issue related to meningococcal disease? That been addressed before. However, we're talking about, say, the relation to infant, in relation to adolescents, relation to various groups of adults, including the lab personnel with a certain health condition, military, and as well as other factors. So if you talk about infants, for example, age groups with the highest invasive meningococcal incidence, naive and immature immune system, and that lead to reduction of protection of maternal antibody levels. The same apply when we talk about adolescents, when we talk about age group with the second invasive meningococcal disease with a high incidence peak, waning the immunity, even if we vaccinate in the childhood, the issue related to high carriage rate, and of course, pivotal roles in the transmission, including crowdiness, high-risk behaviors, like Dr. Faisal was addressing the issue related to mass gathering, particularly during Hajj season. Concern more of the issue related adult at high-risk groups, talking about lab personnel, particularly the microbiologists who routinely work with these organisms, with the individual with different comorbidities, and of course, we don't miss what you call it, tobacco smoking and the influence of adding these other at the high-risk group. And of course, the military and the others as well. Now, if you're talking about the invasive, why is so important? Actually, one of the frequent causing what you call it side effect in relation to sepsis, in relation to septic shock, in relation to severe sepsis. If you compare meningitis due to Neisseria meningitidis as well as other microorganisms, you can clearly see that from this information, this slide, that sepsis, septic shock, and severe sepsis is actually representing high percentage due to Neisseria meningitidis if you compare it with other microorganisms such as Streptococcus pneumonia or Haemophilus influenza. Now, although we have almost 12 serotypes, but we concern mainly with 6 serotypes circulating everywhere internationally. We don't know what was going on later on, but however, if you compare the incidence of these serotypes, you can see variation across countries and the region. I'm not going to discuss that in detail, But my message, although the busy slide, my message here that is a dynamic process. So we see actually it changes in the serotypes between different countries, between different regions. That is emphasize the importance of what you call it, initiating a surveillance programs to see what is the predominant serotype circulating in the community, national as well as international. You can see a lot of variation between the serotype between different countries. Even I will present later on, even in one country, different years, there is also a variation in the serotype circulating in the community itself. Now, the survival may be at a risk because of the serious sequel in the survival. We're talking about almost 10% suffer severe sequelae, increasing to 50% in adult survival, and almost more than 30% experience adult sequelae, ranging from psychological behavior, physical side effect, as well as neurological effect. And Dr. Faisal addressed that in a nice way of dealing about the consequences of this meningococcal disease. So since the serogroup distribution is a dynamic process, it's actually what I would say that the trends is unpredictable. We don't know what will happen. We don't know what is going on. This is just the data related to proportion of the cases in different countries, internationally, including United States, different year, Brazil, Colombia, Czech Republic, and as well as UK. You can clearly see that the variation and the increasing in different serotypes different from different countries. So if you're talking about, for example, as example in the United States, we see an increasing in 2016, if you compare it with the 10, the group B. If you talk about Brazil, for example, you see an increasing in group C and W. If you talk about Colombia, again, increasing in C. If you take it to Czech Republic, B and C, and so on. So that makes to us a difficulty to, what you call it, predict what's going on in relation to the serotype. And that is emphasized the importance of what you call it, doing a surveillance program in order to see what is the predominant serotypes circulating in the community or in the country itself. If you're presenting some data in relation to Arab countries, Middle East countries, or MENA regions, comparing Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Oman, Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, different years or less than 5 years, Tunisia and others, you can clearly see that this is also an important to know to deal with variation in the what you call it, the etiological agent of meningitis. So comparing, for example, cases with Neisseria meningitidis, Haemophilus influenza, Streptococcus pneumonia, as well as unknown cases, you can clearly see that the incidence of different microorganisms causing meningitis in Middle East and North Africa varies from one country to another. So you have to know what is again the predominant organisms circulating in your setting. Fortunately, Haemophilus influenza, we've been able to use vaccine against type B Haemophilus. We use now a vaccine for Streptococcus pneumonia. We don't see much actually of the invasive Streptococcus pneumonia because of the implication of the vaccine itself. However, in Neisseria meningitidis, we don't know what is the serotypes circulating recently, as well as what we cannot predict what new serotypes will get involved in the future. Now, if you're talking about now invasive meningococcal disease, particularly in the serogroups in infant, you can clearly see that I will contrast data from serogroup B and other serogroups, including ACWY. You can clearly see that in United Kingdom, almost 90% of the serotypes circulating in UK is about actually group B. If you look, for example, is is about 84%. In Canada is almost 80% group B. Why this data is important? Because, during Hajj or during mass gathering season, we always received population or people coming from these different countries. Once we receive these different countries, we expect that this population will carry what you call it serogroup B in the nasopharyngeals, and it can actually spread during the mass gathering season for one reason to another. So you can tell clearly that almost over 50% of these cases is due to group B, serogroups B. Despite the treatment, however, the cases is much higher compared with some other vaccine preventable disease. You can clearly see that with the meningococcal is almost the estimated case fertility rate is about 10% as compared to other diseases, particularly with the vaccine preventable disease like H influenza, pneumococcal, diphtheria, and others. Now, my intention to share this information with you that we have to see again to prove the dynamic of the serogroups causing invasive meningococcal disease in Middle East countries. So I'm presenting probably data published by Professor Memesh in Oman, Kuwait, and Qatar. You can clearly see that even between these Gulf countries, there's a variation, although it's a little bit old data, but this is what's available in the literatures. Again, stressing the difficulty of conducting surveillance programs because of the, again, difficulty to isolate the organisms. Most of the treatment actually empirical, so clinician can use the initiate drug even before they take a specimen for culture and susceptibility. But if you look clearly here that if you see, for example, Oman, 2001, 2008, most likely we see group W, 135, followed by group A, group C, and group Y. If you look to Kuwait, for example, almost 43%, 45% of the serogroups is actually serogroup B. If you look to Qatar data from 2008, 2010, again, you have almost 40% of the serotypes circulating in Qatar is W135, followed by serogroup A and serogroup B. You can tell also from these data that you have almost a reasonable percentage of unknown. These unknown, we don't know what is going on. Probably something like X, something like we don't know what is going on. And we have, that's again, stress the importance of conducting surveillance program to see what other serotypes circulating in the community as well. Now, if you look to number reported by year in Saudi Arabia, data 1994 to 2008, and this is as Professor Faisal was addressing, the outbreak happened due to W135 in 2000. So we start bivalent vaccine, A and C, and then after this outbreak, when we screen for the serotypes causing such outbreak, we find out is W135. So pharmaceutical companies start to prepare a quadruple vaccine, including ACWY, and we introduced it in 2002, 2001, 2002. And as you can see that it took us almost 2 years until we actually get effective impact of the introduction of the quadruple vaccine. Unfortunately, we don't have much cases nowadays in relation to meningococci. Number of cases, again, number of cases in Saudi Arabia in different years in relation to different serotypes. This is again data we collected from 1994 until 2008. And you can clearly see that during the outbreak in 2000, we'll see more of the what you call it W135 here. And then we see variation in the serotype in different years until 2008. We really see very few cases due to Neisseria meningitidis. Another country representing different years with a variation in the serotype. So again, we have to look to the incidence or the serotype. So an example, Algeria, for example, if you take data 2005, 2007, 2009, these actually, there is a variation. If you look, for example, 2005, Group B, and Group A, and Group C, and non-group. So if you look to 2007, a little bit variation actually in serogroups. They start to see W135 here in their community, and we still have a reasonable number of almost 40% non-group. In data recently in 2009, you can clearly see that there is an increase in the incidence of serogroup B from almost 20% to almost 30%, with a decrease in the serotype W and probably other as well. So this is dynamic change in the serotype, emphasize the importance of conducting surveillance programs to see what is going on in relation to the serotypes. Same examples in Tunisia, contrast data from 97 to 99, comparing to 98, 2004, and you can see that an increasing in the number of serogroup B in 2004 compared to 1999. Same issue related to Morocco. When you talk about data in 2000 and 2003, 2006, again, variation in the serotypes in Group B Neisseria meningitidis in different years, as well as contrasting Group A, Group C, and W135. So again, emphasizing the issue related of the importance of the surveillance program to see what is going on in relation to the serotype circulating in so many communities. Now, to my surprise, actually, when I looked to this data published, although 2007, however, data taken in 1998 to 2004, number I know is not really much, 135. However, to my surprise, almost actually 50% of the serotypes circulating in Egyptian population is actually Group B. You know, I'm stressing that because we're only concentrating in serogroups ACWY. We don't know what is going on in relation to B. We need to know what is going on in other countries when we receive people coming to Hajj and Umrah, and what are they carrying as a serotypes in relation to Neisseria meningitidis. Now, if you talk about serogroups in Saudi Arabia, again, if you can see that almost 40% here is ungrouped, and then if you take to Group B, Group A, and as well as C and Y. So we have some data in relation to the serogroups, although it's an old one, 2000, 2008. At that time, we don't see much B. We see actually 3%, but I'm sure if we do recent surveillance on what is going on circulating, the pictures of this percentage will be varies if we do data 2020 or 2022. But again, it emphasizes the changing in the serotypes of the organism circulating in the community itself. One data published in Saudi Arabia, data from MOH 2012. Again, they test the distribution of serogroup among the invasive meningococcal during the pre-epidemic and then the epidemic 2000 to 2001 and post-epidemic period 2002 to 2011. You can clearly see that although with C Group B, I mean, it was the pre-epidemic, we see almost about 26%. And then in the 2000-2001, during the outbreak of W135, we don't see much of the B. However, when we screen data from 2002 to 2012, we've seen an increasing in the percentage of the group B Neisseria meningitis. Again, a dynamic process of importance of the surveillance program. So W135 has become predominant when you excluding the epidemic period from 2000 to 2001. Serogroup A is now second in the incidence, and then serogroup B is actually is a 30%. So we need really to think about how we're going to tackle the change in the serotypes with the different time in the community itself. Again, if you're talking about age group, can clearly see that, as I mentioned, is actually the young infant is less than 1 year. Is reported cases by month during the first 5 years in Saudi Arabia, and that can tell you exactly the importance of initiating the vaccine in the first year of life. And that's why now in Saudi Arabia, as Professor Faisal was mentioned, the vaccine now is a routine vaccination for all the childhood. We give it as a 2 dose, 9 and 12. When we approved the vaccine for 9 and 12, it was there at that time. The approval for the vaccine is only to give it at 9 and 12. We have several discussions that we still see few cases under 6 months. So I think in the future, we need again to see what is going on, because if we can initiate the vaccine less than 6 months, we may prevent. I know probably is not very high cases, but it's important to protect such a child with a meningococcal disease. So I think if we come across approval vaccine, which you can give it less than 6 months, say 2 months or 4 months, I guess that will be advantage to initiate giving a vaccine in childhood. But at the moment, the only vaccine approved when we approved the vaccine is the one they give it twice, one at 9 months and the second dose at 12 months. So this is the picture of the importance of the age in per month, of the importance of initiating actually the vaccine early in a childhood program. So understanding the trend in the meningococcal disease and epidemiology is really important to redefining the measures to control and prevent, and the identification of groups at high risk and the distribution of prevailing meningococcal serotype will be actually critical in future decision and recommendation regarding the non-epidemic use of the meningococcal value. This probably figure, again, repeating what I have said and also what Dr. Faisal said, is a variation again in the different serotypes in different regions. Again, emphasizing the issue related to B vaccine in different European countries, different in the state and in other countries, emphasizing the importance of the B group. You can clearly see that the variation is huge between different serogroups from different regions as well. If you're talking about the invasive meningococcal incidence, cases per 100,000 in different countries, as I mentioned, you can see clearly again emphasizing the importance of the serogroup B, particularly from population coming from, for example, United States, coming from Spain, Germany, Canada, France, and other. You're talking about almost over 80% of the serogroup B circulating in these communities. So if you look to the main B incidence in the infant, is high incidence in infant of group B in Europe. However, we have a second or so smaller incidence of peak in adolescents as a young adult, but we still see higher, much peak in less than 1 year of age, particularly in infant. When you're talking about the effect of invasive meningococcal disease, although it affects all ages, however, again, mainly it will affect the infant and young children. And that's why in most of the countries, including Saudi Arabia, we actually initiating what you call it adolescence dose between 14 to 20 years for the dose of the invasive meningococcal. We don't see much variation between male and female in relation to the invasive meningococcal disease. So this is mainly the incidence in the action. Now, if you back again to European countries where we receive people coming to us during mass gathering season, data 2017, if you again you look to the serogroups in 26 European countries, you can clearly see that the variation you see in 1 year old, 1 to 4, based on the age group, you can clearly see that group B actually is dominating in this European, in the 26 European countries, followed by group C, probably group W, Y, and other as well. Turkey is another example where we received a lot of people coming from Turkey for Hajj. The incidence rate are high in children above 5 years of age. Again, contrasting serogroups, different serogroups with the different age. And you can clearly see that, I mean, serogroup B is actually 1 to 4 years. It's really much higher than if you compare it with other serogroups in different years. And even so the variation again mainly will be in the children under 5 years of age. The group B is one of the most predominant in Arab countries as well as Middle East countries. Data from different countries, including Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, Kuwait, and probably Iraq, almost a high percentage of the serogroups of serogroup B. So you have about data from Iraq and as well as from Kuwait and North Africa, that the meningococcal mostly affected younger children, and group B actually the most frequent identified serotypes. Again, MenB is one of the third most leading case of invasive meningococcal disease. If you contrast group B, group A, and the others, less than 1 year, between 1 and 5, again, the invasive was the MenB is actually the third most leading cause of the invasive meningococcal disease in Saudi Arabia. Again, data sources from statistical books from Saudi Arabia, different years, and again, contrasting with the different years here, with a different year, you can clearly see that actually almost different serotypes circulating in different years of time. As Dr. Faisal was presenting that, you can clearly that almost all serotypes, as including here into data from 2016 with the different serotypes, with the reported cases with the different serotypes in the meningococcal disease. Now, if you talk about mortality or cases, and you can again, from 1995 to 2011, again, is actually high mortality when in a different age group due to cases of invasive meningococcal disease. The case fatality rate is much higher, as you can see. It almost reached 30% in above 45 degrees, and is actually about 7% less than 1 year, followed by 1 to 4 in about 10%, and then between 15 to 45, almost 20% case fatality rate from the invasive meningococcal disease. That's why we may initiate what you call it dose at adolescence of the vaccine of the meningococci. Recent data shows that in Saudi Arabia, for considering the meningitis serogroup B, the Neisseria meningitis, nasopharyngeal carriage during Hajj, published by Professor Ziad and his group. And this is one of the largest of the epidemiology of Neisseria among pilgrimage. And again, we've seen use of Cipro as a prophylactic, and we should really reconsider that and consideration of what you call it, a group B serotypes of the meningococcal as required for particular people coming from regions where they carry a lot of serogroup B. Finally, in relation to travelers, in relation to Hajj, mass gathering, although it's rarely affected travelers, however, it's actually difficult to establish if infection is travel-related or not. So it's actually invasive meningococcal may be travel-related if symptoms started shortly after returning home, or cultural strain is rarely seen in the country of origin. Although it's rare, but it's a devastating infection in travelers. Almost to 10% are asymptomatic carriers, may be higher during epidemics, and the high risk situation is known to everyone, particularly traveler, crowdedness, close contact, pilgrimage, seasonal workers, and so on. And the way to reduce this is to avoid intimate facial contact, to avoid overcrowding, and of course, get vaccinated against meningococcal and meningococcal, but with the different serotypes, including in the vaccine itself. One of the data I've seen previously here from Kuwait by Dr. Intisar. She was studying in Kuwait the trends and variation in the epidemiology of the meningococcal disease, 87 to 2018. And actually, the routine use of the quadrivalent polysaccharide was successful in reducing different serogroups related to meningococcal disease in Kuwait. However, serogroup B has emerged as a major cause of the meningococcal disease. And probably this is, I don't know if I can say it as a replacement, because we'll get rid of the serogroup A, C, W, and W and Y. So I may consider it as a replacement, because we expect, like we see it in pneumococci, like we see it even with Haemophilus influenza, group B, for example. We start seeing now different groups other than group B. We start seeing group A, group E, and so on. And so the serogroups in Kuwait B was responsible for outbreak in 2002, account for almost 30% of all the cases, and is the main cause of meningococcal disease in children up to 14 years. It's up to actually 40%. This is really nice data to show how important to ensure that we're covering almost serotypes of the meningococcal circulating in the population, particularly during mass gathering. So finally, what is new? Since we see cases below 1 year, I think we need to modify our routine vaccination with a question marks here as a personal view of, because we see cases less than 6 months, so we initiate vaccine 9 and 12. However, if we see a vaccine which can give it less than 9 months, it will be beneficial to the child. We need to think about the catch-up dose. Probably we can discuss that later on in the discussion. And as with the change in the epidemiology of the serotypes of the Syria meningitis, we should actually start looking carefully to different groups, including group B meningococci. So my conclusion, we have data now confirming that MEN B exists in Saudi Arabia. It's one of the third most frequent serotypes by almost 17%. Although we need probably recent data, and I'm sure we have now facilities to run a national surveillance program in collaboration with MOH, CDC, and others to collect isolates and see what is going on in serotypes of the Syria meningitis. Multiple studies have been shown that MEN B is being imported and exported into the kingdom during Hajj and during Umrah, as we see it from different countries. It becomes the most predominant serogroups in Arab Middle East countries nowadays. And according to MAH surveillance system, is actually still exists despite the fact that we implement ACWY vaccination for many years, and we have really now we don't see much of these serotypes. But I always discuss it in relation to, if you allow me to say about replacement. I mean, if you get rid of certain serotypes, I'm sure other serotypes will take advantage and probably spread more than before. Dynamic serotypes, a new vaccine addition is one of the advantage to cover from the 2 months and also to cover B vaccine. Thank you very much for your attention, and we're ready for answering any question at the end of the symposium, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Atif Shibl, for this wonderful lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to shift to the third and the last lecture in our webinar tonight. It is about vaccine role in defeating meningitis, WHO 2030 vision. I am going to introduce the speaker, Dr. Mansour Khalaf, who is registered pharmacist with a master's degree in public health from Denmark and a diploma in infection control from USA. He is a member of, he has membership in Canadian Public Health Association. Dr. Khalaf has 5 publications in the field of epidemiology and pharmacoeconomic related to hepatitis A, Neisseria meningitis, rotavirus management, immunization, pneumococcal diseases. He is a speaker in regional and local congresses. Dr. Khalaf is a support key decision maker at MOH Public Health Deputy Ministry to develop many disease awareness programs targeting vaccine preventable diseases in Saudi Arabia. He was responsible for Gulf GCC and Yemen business development. Currently, Dr. Khalaf is a medical affairs lead for pediatric, adolescents, and adults vaccines in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Dr. Khalaf, you are welcome, and the floor with you, the mic with you, and we are here to listen. You are muted, Doctor.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, now is okay.
Okay.
Now clear.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for being here today. I'm really delighted, and I would like actually to thank all my superiors, speakers, actually, Professor Atif, Dr. Faisal, for their beautiful and informative presentation. Well, actually, let me take you in another actually dimension, which is relating to a very important occasion of for this year, which is of course happens in 5th of October, which is the Meningitis Day, World Meningitis Day. And very important to mention here that we are in this year again not only celebrating the World Meningitis Day, but again emphasizing on the WHO goal for defeat meningitis that should be concluded by 2023. So this is about me. I'm myself, Mansour Khalaf. As a disclaimer, I'm a fully paid GSK medical affair employee. Okay. Well, my presentation is a short one, and I hope that it will not take that much time. So it's around 15 to 20 minutes max. I will start actually with what I have started just beginning of my speech now. It's about the WHO 2030 vision towards a world free of meningitis. This is actually it's a WHO goal that has been published towards the 2030 to defeat meningitis. Just to remind all of us that main causes of acute bacterial meningitis, it is composed of four main bacterial meningitis: Meningococcus, which is causing invasive meningococcal disease; Pneumococcus, which is causing invasive pneumococcal disease; Haemophilus influenza, which is caused by Haemophilus influenza type B; and Group B Streptococcus. So those are the four main bacterial meningitis that's causing invasive meningococcal. WHO 2030 vision towards the world free of meningitis, a special emphasis on pandemic that can disrupt infrastructure, divert resources, and decrease resources. In 2020, WHO published a roadmap to defeat this meningitis. And there was three visionary goals towards this, towards 2030, defeat meningitis or world free of meningitis. Number one, it's eliminate epidemics of bacterial meningitis, which we have just mentioned, the four types of bacterial meningitis. Number two is reduce cases of vaccine preventable bacterial meningitis by 50% have, and death by 70%. Reduce disability and improve quality of life after meningitis of any cause. And this we have seen in previous actually kind speakers, eminent speakers, they have mentioned something related to the consequences and sequelae of the meningitis, bacterial meningitis. So this is about the goal or the WHO goal towards defeating meningitis. If you look at vaccines that has been developed worldwide from different manufacturers towards to control or to prevent meningitis, especially meningococcal meningitis, which is the topic of this today scientific event, we found that there are plenty of vaccines that has been presented. We start with the polysaccharide ones that has been actually developed worldwide, and then to the conjugated ones, and then to the most advanced innovative vaccines against special groups, like, for example, MenB, that is available currently around the world. For GSK, as a GSK, we have two important vaccines that has been developed to protect and to prevent the invasive meningococcal diseases, IMD. The first one, it's to prevent ACWY strains. And I just want to recall that the previous eminent speakers, they have mentioned that there are six main serogroups that is causing invasive meningococcal disease. And among that, four of them, there was a vaccine that produced long time ago. And the fifth one, which is the MenB in particular, again, there was actually, there is actually a vaccine that has been produced and is now currently around the world available, which is the MenB vaccine. So currently around the world, there is 5 serogroups vaccine to protect against those kind of infection or those serogroups. GSK meningococcal vaccine for infants, the ACWY, it's either 2+1 dose or 1+1 dose for infants from 6 months to 12 months or 6 weeks to 6 months for 2+1, or 1 dose from 12 months onward. For MenB, either it is 2+1 or 3+1, I mean 2 primary doses and 1 booster dose from 6 weeks to 8 weeks of age, and it's called 4C MenB. So 2 vaccines are available. The first one is ACWY, which is covering 4 serogroups, and the second one is covering only MenB vaccine. Okay. Who need the protection? Who is at risk actually? Are all infants and young children are at highest risk. Most cases occur in otherwise healthy subjects. Some occur in unknown risk groups, for example, asplenia, and I remember actually Dr. Faisal, he mentioned this one, congenital complement deficit and prior eculizumab therapy. So this is actually the risk groups or groups that needs to be protected against MinB in particular. Okay, what is the situation in Saudi Arabia? Situation in Saudi Arabia, actually the authority and the key external experts and decision makers, they have recognized the danger of the ACWY. Since we have a lot of immigrants coming for Hajj and Umrah and others from the borders, south or even north borders. So they have recognized this one, and the ACWY has been added to the National Vaccination Schedule, AVI, I mean, Expanded Programmation, as of 2013. So now we have the ACWY at 9 months and 12 months in the National Vaccination Schedule, as well as another dose at 18 months for adolescent. So we have now 3 doses, 2 for infants and 1 for adolescent from the ACWI. And coming soon, actually, we're expecting actually the MinB to be added as well as actually during in the first year of life, and even for at-risk group like for Hajj and Umrah pilgrims, sickler patients, asplenia patients, etc. Okay, so with regard to the MinB in particular, because we have seen the ACWI, so it has been available for some time in the National Vaccination Schedule, etc. But why MinB? Why we are concentrating on MinB? Because MinB, it has been under development since long time ago. But actually, none of those previous vaccines were very successful controlling all the zero. I can say the sequences of or different serotypes of this MinB. So what we have here, this is actually the polysaccharide MinB, as you can see. So why it was difficult to produce it? Because the polysaccharide capsule is poorly immunogenic for MinB. It's not like the ACWI. It's poorly immunogenic. This is one thing. Second thing, the structure homology between capsular of MinB polysaccharide and the human tissue. There is a structure homology which could lead actually to some interaction. And this is why it was really difficult to make it. However, scientists, they work, and I will tell you how they make it. Actually, they work it and they went into something new technology or way of producing, not the ordinary way of producing vaccines, called the reverse vaccinology, in which they went to a computer and they put all the possible antigens inside. And through the computer, they look at, and the computer actually processing what exactly is the most antigenic type of antigens on this particular bacteria that could lead to protection. And they found those 4 different actually antigens, which I will mention it right now. Okay, which you can see it in front of you. Okay, now if we will go to see how effective it was when we made it, this 4C MinB. Actually, it was very effective, but before we say how effective it was and show you some data, I would just want to mention something that related to the 4C MinB, that how many countries they have approved it, and in how many countries it has been actually used. In fact, that in total, more than 75 million doses have been distributed from the 4C MinB around the world since it has been produced. And it was approved in more than 45 countries and included the 9 national immunization programs for infants. I mean. So in North America, Canada, US, in South America, and South America, for example, in Brazil, Argentina, etc., as well as in Europe, in UK, it's in the national immunization program, in Italy, as well as actually in other parts of the world around, in Australia, in Asia, in Africa. So a lot of countries have adopted, and it is now available. If we look at how this vaccine is used, as I mentioned previously, in different parts of the world, so different schedule, either it is 2+1 or 3+1. If we look at UK, which I have just mentioned that this is in their national immunization program for infants, it has been introduced to all infants in UK since September 2015. The program used 2+1 immunization schedule, administered at 2 months, 4 months as a primary, and 12 months as a booster. So 2 and 4 and 12. So parents advised to give their 3 doses of prophylactic paracetamol to infants and vaccine, dose at 1 and 2. This is actually to prevent, God forbid,
الصوت اختفى دكتور منصور.
Okay. Is it like this is okay now?
Now is okay.
It's fine. Thank you. Well, in this paper that in New England Journal of Medicine, vaccination of infants with the meningococcal group B vaccine was reviewed, and it was really shown how effective it was, the 4-CMB, when it has been added to the national immunization program in UK. As you can see here, a reduction of 75% in the first 3 years of national program from the invasive disease caused by MinB in particular. So 75% reduction in the first 3 years, and this continues actually to be reduced until now. So each year since the program was implemented, more birth cohorts have been protected and the number of cases have been declined. What's about actually, if we look at this one, Meningococcal 2 in Italian region, as I mentioned previously, again, I've shown you in the map that Italy, again, they have added there. So let's look in 2 different regions in Italy, Tuscany and Veneto. So it was a retrospective observational study evaluating the effectiveness and impact of 4-CMB using a real-world data, okay, between 2014 and 2018. In Tuscany, they have used it as 3 doses, 3+1, 2, 4, 6, and the booster dose 12, 13. While in Veneto, they have used it as 2+1, 7 and 9, 7 months, 9 months, and 15 months of age. Okay. So what was the result? Okay. Now, if we look at the Tuscany, whom we have used 3+1 schedule, the vaccine effectiveness, which is, of course, it's like a real world data, is 93.6%. While in Veneto, whom they have used 2+1, it was again very effective and it reached 91%. So in both regions, they have achieved a very good actually result in controlling the MinB IMD. In both regions, there was a high vaccination rate, reaching 83.9% Tuscany and 81.7% in Veneto, which is the other part, which they have used 2+1. So based on all of this, it shows very important that vaccine effectiveness was high in both regions. What's about the other part around the world? We have seen England, and we have mentioned, I've just mentioned that 75% have been the vaccine impact on MinB spread. In Italy, it was more than 90% in 2 different regions. So one region 98, and the other one is 91. In Portugal, endemic setting, so it wasn't actually so universal, but was endemic setting, 79% vaccine effectiveness. In Australia, a statewide study, 71% vaccine effectiveness for adolescents 16 to 19 years. Okay. And in Quebec, Canada, where they have used it at the ages 2 months to 20 years, and 49,000 individual has more than 1 dose, the overall actually it was 96% reduction in disease incidence only in Quebec area, or in Quebec in one part of Canada. Okay. So what's about the safety, which is the most important we can say with regard to all vaccines? Safety profile of 4-CMB in real-world setting was consistent with that established in clinical trial. So in Canada, the report was showing that no unexpected acute or adverse events reported. In US, a similar situation, no new safety concern. In UK, since it has been used in national vaccination or immunization program, more than 3 million doses given, no new safety signals, favorable benefit risk profile. In France, outbreak setting, more than 4,062 doses given, 7.6 adverse events per 100 doses, and no severe adverse events. Similar situation in Australia, post-marketing surveillance, no new unexpected safety issues, as well as in Italy, where it was actually 2,161 adverse events reported to the to their authority, and 12.5% of these were serious only. Okay, and the same situation with the Germany. Post-market surveillance overall reporting rate was 0.25 per 100 doses, no immune-mediated or neurological safety signal. So in all the regions around the world, safety profile was high. In summary, and this is my last slide, disease characteristic: in spite of appropriate treatment, meningococcal disease can progress rapidly, often having devastating and life-threatening effect. In epidemiology, the diversity of meningococcal serogroups and serogroup distribution varies by country. So MenB is predominant in different countries. The burden of MenB disease is greater in infants and remain important in adolescents. Need for different approach, yes, and this is changing. Epidemiology is dynamic. So we can see sometimes that AC is high, while B is low, but however, this is actually not always like this. So MenB is developing, and multi-component approach was needed. How MenB vaccine has been produced after all of those hassles, it was produced by a new technology called reverse vaccinology, in which a genomic-based approach that allowed rapid identification of a new vaccine candidate. And what is foreseen MenB? It's the first broad-spectrum vaccine against MenB that was developed using the reverse vaccinology technology and contain 4 antigenic components, which I've shown you previously. This is the end of my presentation. This is for disclaimer, should you need actually to report any side effect. And thank you very much, really, for your listening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mansour Khalaf, for this nice, very informative lecture you gave it. And as long the mic is still with you, so I will start with you. And we are now, ladies and gentlemen, in the last session of our webinar. We are looking for your questions that we received already during this webinar. Dr. Mansour, what is the best time for protection against meningitis?
Well, the best time is actually before anyone actually goes for mass gathering, for example. But for infants, we do actually recommend to give the vaccine at younger age, starting from 2 months, 2 to 4 months, and the third dose as a booster dose. So this is actually the preferred vaccination schedule. Currently, we have the ACWI, as I said, at 9 months and 12 months. And we have, of course, it's recommended for Hajj and Umrah, prior to Hajj and Umrah. And this is, again, the same situation for MenB. I hope that answered your kind of question.
I hope. Another question, Dr. Mansour. Then I will shift to others, to our speakers. I know that the time is late a little bit. Is the vaccine contraindicated with meningococcal vaccine contraindicated to be given or any reaction with others?
You are asking me or asking you are asking me?
Yes.
Okay. So can you repeat the question again, please?
The vaccine contraindicated with other vaccines?
Okay. Well, actually, there is no contraindication. It's actually the vaccine is you can use it with concomitantly with other vaccines. I mean, at the other schedule, for example, with the flu, you can use it even with for adolescent. I mean, or adult, and can be used with the other routine vaccines and for infants. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. As long we are speaking about vaccine, and I think our attendees want to make more clear about this point. Dr. Prof. Shibl, this is for you. What are the meningococcal vaccine situation in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia?
Well, as Mansour said, probably Dr. Faisal can tell actually more of that, but we have now routine vaccination, 2 doses given at 9 and 12, and there is a dose for adolescents, 15 years for the meningococcal. Dr. Faisal, if you would like to add more, appreciate it.
Yes, Dr. Atif, yeah. The routine administration for childhood, currently the meningitis ACW and Y, the quadrivalent at 9 months and 12 months. And also there is another booster dose that be given at 18 years. This is for the adolescent population in the first year of college. So all first year college students should receive a booster dose at 18 years of age. This is a routine, and also it's being given to people who are performing Hajj. It's a requirement by Ministry of Health for anybody who's going for Hajj to receive a dose of meningococcal if 5 years has passed since his last dose.
What about adolescents? Should be vaccinated against meningococcal?
Yes, maybe I answer this. Yes, this adolescent actually are recommended in Saudi Arabia based on Ministry of Health national recommendation schedule for adolescent to receive a booster dose at 18 years of age. Also internationally, in the United States, for example, they receive 2 doses actually at 11 and 16. So, but here in Saudi Arabia, 18 years. And I think we need to insist on that because actually this dose is always missed in the country among the adolescent population, the military recruits, and all those people need to receive the single dose as a booster ACWY vaccine at 18 years of age.
Prof. Shibl, do you think there is any people cannot receive the vaccine?
No. I don't think so. I mean, there is data that even you can give it to pregnancy with safety. Dr. Faisal maybe add more of that,
sure.
But there is no what you call it any contraindication.
Sure.
That is good. If someone, Dr. Faisal, if someone exposed to a case of meningitis, should we vaccinate him?
Yeah. The issue of exposure, this is a kind of a contact exposure, inshallah, and we don't have such situation. But first of all, this is a droplet precaution because actually the infection is transmitted through a droplet. So immediately droplet precaution should be applied and droplet isolation should be applied. And the second is to start a chemoprophylaxis. And there are several antibiotics actually to be given as a chemoprophylaxis, and as soon as possible, within 24 hours, it must be administered single dose, usually of most of the known chemoprophylaxis that being used a single dose, maybe other can be given as like for 2 days, but usually for ceftriaxone, for example, ciprofloxacin, a single dose will be enough. But the timing is very important. And also there is another dilemma, 2 dilemmas actually. The first may be related to the definition of the close contact. Also it need to be identified well. Prolonged contact with a close exposure to the droplet secretions. And the other dilemma is related to the antibiotic resistant, maybe the ciprofloxacin now is known for resistant. So a decision which chemoprophylaxis to be given need to be looked at, but the best is to start a chemoprophylaxis, droplet isolation, and you can vaccinate definitely, but the vaccine will take time until it develops an immune response. But you vaccinate, but to control the disease immediately, the acute phase, because people with close contact, prolonged contact as definition, they are at very high risk to get a disease again. So chemoprophylaxis will be the first choice for this population. If you may add.
Yeah, I may add that recently, actually, there is data in the literature show that a few of the bacteria meningitis strain actually resistant to ciprofloxacin. So again, this is a stress the issue of isolating the organisms and then to see what is the resistant pattern against the ciprofloxacin.
Dr. Faisal, there is a question just now I received from Dr. Khalid Al-Rabi'. With whom should we start vaccination, especially if there is risk, like the situation in Saudi Arabia?
With whom to start vaccination? If the question, and I got it. So first, the routine administration of vaccine, and this is important part, as we mentioned before. And then the high-risk population. And those high-risk population include the people with complement deficiencies, the HIV patients, patients with functional or anatomical asplenia. So those population are priority actually to receive the meningococcal vaccination immediately. And then the routine administration, as I mentioned, 9 months, 12 months, and then 18 years for adolescent population. And then the high-risk people, specifically those people at very high risk actually to develop a complication related to meningococcal vaccine. And these are the main categories which I mentioned: the complement, whether because of disease or because of treatment, or HIV patients or asplenia patients as a top priority.
Thank you. Prof. Shibl, this question also I received. What are the common side effects of the vaccines?
Not really much side effect, but the common one probably pain at the site of the injection. That's it. But there is no known side effect.
Like any vaccination.
Yeah, I mean, there is no what you call it really major side effect.
Yes, we are very near to the 12 o'clock. So the last question to you, Dr. Mansour, regarding MEN-B. When do you expect it will be in the national immunization program?
This is a very good question. It is not in my hand, but actually I would say actually it is.
You are very near with the people in the Ministry of Health.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, it's really very important. We are eager to see it in Saudi Arabia in the nationalization program. We can see that there is a great actually emphasis from the stakeholders in CDC, Wiqaya, and Public Health Authority, as well as in Ministry of Health. Similar situation with the scientific societies, stakeholders in pediatric infectious, adult infectious society, family medicine. They are all actually eager to have it. As I mentioned, in Saudi Arabia, it's a country where we have a lot of people, travelers, and we are traveling out again. I would say that the first one maybe will be for Hajj and Umrah. It will be soon, maybe next year, for domestic Hajj and Umrah pilgrims. So this one is the first thing. Then it will be followed, I believe, for at-risk group, for example, sicklers or asplenia and others, at-risk group, infants and adults. And then the second stage will come for the universal mass vaccination, which will be in the years to follow. But it is actually, I can see that this is in the progressed very well within the authority. Yeah.
شكرا دكتور منصور خلف. And also lot of thanks to all speakers in this webinar for your effort and for your time and keeping with us to midnight today. And we thank our attendees and share us this webinar. A special thanks to the Saudi Society of Family and Community Medicine for their continuous activity towards education of the public, as well as me and all doctors. Thanks for GSK for your support this webinar and for participation also in the scientific program. I will say thanks to Fix, the company responsible about organization. It was nice and perfect. Thank you لملتقى الخبرات لتنظيم المعارض والمؤتمرات. Thank you to all our team in the technical department and support who run our webinar so smoothly and nice without any interruption. الحمد لله. شكرا لكم وتصبحون على خير ونلتقي في لقاءات علمية أخرى بإذن الله تعالى.
شكرا جزيلا. شكرا
يا دكتور. نشوفك إن شاء الله على
مع
خير.
السلامة.
حياك الله بروف. حياك الله دكتور.
الله يسلمك. شكرا يا دكتور. شكرا.
مع السلامة.